Alright, hello internet friends. My name is Bay, and I'm sitting down with two devs that are not ready for these questions.
Oh, no.
Well, there was some back and forth, so neither one of you are Ian, but whenever Ian sees me, he goes, "Oh, hi Adam." So he's ready. So you want to introduce yourselves to the camera, to everybody, let you know what you do at Blizzard.
Hey, my name is Morgan Day. I'm the lead encounter designer on World of Warcraft.
And I'm Daniel Stahl. I'm a producer, and I work on Island Expeditions.
Alright. The scuttlebutt that's been on the internet the last couple of days with PAX interviews was that everything's been asked. But I put together 7 pages and 22 questions or so. We'll get through as many as we can.
I've been crossing them off as they've been.
Well, I've been reading the other interviews. It's like, so they're good ones, but there aren't like, where's that punch?
Don't punch me.
No, not you. Don't punch Daniel. We're good.
Yeah, we're ready. We're ready.
Yeah.
Let's go.
That would
So
be sad.
the first question I have to ask is
Yeah.
the stance that Blizzard has with the global cooldown.
Yeah.
And if that's just something you're working on in alpha and beta, and because a lot of them, I'll throw my hat in the ring here and say that some of the really iconic ones that have animations, like Death Knights, were like, oh, Empowered Runeweapon has animation? But then some of them don't feel very good
Sure, yeah.
on the GCD.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Recklessness, Combustion. So where are you guys at with that?
Right. So I can speak to that a little bit. So, with Battle for Azeroth and really with all of our big expansion releases, we take that as an opportunity to kind of look at things that might have worked for a specific way for a while and say, okay, cool. Do we like how this works? Do we not like how this works? What is the intent of some of these things, and has it gotten away from that over time?
Sure.
Where are we at with this, right? So I think when you look at the global cooldown, and to your point more specifically, things that are off the global cooldown, and what does that mean, right? For me, I think of it, and I think of things like interrupts or kick.
Sure.
Right? And that being off the global cooldown, a lot of that has to do with the gameplay, with the feel of the moment-to-moment combat. And if kick was on the global cooldown, I always think back to Reliquary of Souls, when kick was on the global cooldown and it was your turn to kick. You just, all right, stop pushing my buttons. I know if I screw this up, I'm gonna die, right? It's because we ask you to make a snap decision, a momentary choice of, oh crap, I gotta kick now. So having that off the global cooldown makes a lot of sense, because we ask you to have this reactionary action that you need to take. So with things like a big cooldown, for instance, like you're saying, Recklessness, Avenging Wrath, things like that, as an encounter designer, I'm not going to suddenly put up a big absorb shield and say, break this right now, or you're going to die in 5 seconds, right?
Okay.
Like, if you look at encounters like, the Main of Vigilance in Tomb of Sigiris, the Main of Valor in Return to Karazhan, those things give you a lot of time to prepare for that moment, right? So with things like that, we want you to be able to think ahead, to say, okay, cool, I'm going to push my big cooldown right now.
Sure.
And then go into battle, right? With Maiden of Vigilance, she teleports across the arena, and you've got that home run over there to push a cooldown, to think about, yep, I need to do that. So we're not going to make you make that snap decision.
Okay.
And in terms of, making those buttons feel powerful, giving them a moment, when you think about it, you're like, rah, I want to power up, right? You need that moment to feel awesome. So there are, for instance, cooldowns, like you said, that don't have that right now. I think a big part of this for me is that those things feel special and feel awesome. So we'll look at those particular cooldowns that, like you're saying, if we get player feedback that's like, yeah, there isn't a cool animation, or there isn't a cool visual on this. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Additionally, with global cooldowns, there will always be exceptions to the rules that we're talking about. Right? Like when you look at a spell like Fire Blast on Fire Mages,
Right.
That's off the global for very good mechanical reasons, right? That's really good gameplay. We don't want to lose that gameplay. So we'll always look at them on a case-by-case basis,
Okay.
make exceptions where necessary, but that's kind of where our head is on what the intent of that change is.
I think a lot of the community backlash, to use that word, is like a forward-facing thing, is that it slows down a lot of the gameplay players
Right.
have been used to for a long time.
Right. World of Warcraft should feel tactical, right? You should have time to make those decisions. We don't want it to turn into this like you're playing a Mozart piece on your keyboard. It should feel tactical. Your decisions should feel meaningful. They're going to happen quickly still. 1.5, sometimes much less than that is
Sure.
fast. But in the grand scheme of things, we want those decisions to feel meaningful and
Okay.
impactful.
Sounds good.
Yes.
So, where are the Antorus nerfs?
What? What do you mean? Where are you stuck?
Well, we've had Mythic Argus out since December.
Yeah.
It's April.
Yeah. Do you need nerfs?
I mean, I think people want nerfs, so it's easier to farm right now just to be done with it.
Right. Okay. So that's one of those things where we're constantly looking at that. We're constantly evaluating, like, all right, how many people have killed Argus? Where are we in the content cycle? You know, like you said, we just announced our release date, August 14. We're super stoked about that. So we can look at, all right, cool. How many days before it's time for new content to come out? Are we happy with where the difficulty is on it and where it's at? When it comes to things like you're saying, like encounter design nerfs, like if the hand of the designer says these shall be nerfed, we always look at those under a very specific lens. But we also want there to be ways that it's almost like a self-nerfing of the content. That's partially what we've talked about. Titan forging and war forging. You're going to get stronger and stronger over time. That's one of the cool parts of that system. There's also you're going to have an upgrade every week on your trinket, so that you're feeling a little bit stronger and stronger there. Maybe more people are getting their trinket sets, and the raid is getting stronger that way.
I think a lot of
the more organic ways that are nerfing the raid.
Yeah.
But to your point, we're constantly looking at the difficulty of encounters, if we're happy where they are, and if they're not, then we can then come in and try to make targeted changes that will actually move the meter. Like I try to avoid the just like everything 10% less. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Like we don't prefer to do things like that.
So there's a meme question follow-up.
No. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no. Well, this is meant as a contentious point. Do you feel that the Mythic Argus chains change? Yeah, chains change.
Chains change.
To the 2 guaranteed each time, not the scaling one.
You can't immunity it.
Was that a nerf or a fix?
So when I think of things like that,
right,
there are things that we will change that will cause the encounter to potentially be more difficult, right? I think another example of this is, like Elyson in the Night,
right,
as well as Astromancer, right? We made changes to those encounters and the way that they function because we were seeing something that was not great. Like on those encounters, you were seeing people drop a lot of healers, right? And that's a point where it doesn't feel great as a healer in that point to say like, cool, there's a specific tactic, we're going to do this, here's the result. It's not great. So when we make changes like that, and usually it is to fix a specific problem that is very targeted. Like I was saying, we're not going to just say everything is nerfed. We're going to say, okay, there's a specific problem we're seeing, how do we resolve that specific problem? So with a change like that, oftentimes it might feel like it was a buff to the encounter, but that's not the intent, right? The intent is to change behavior in a way that is going to keep the encounter roughly where it was before, even though it might require some adjustments.
Right. There's the community feedback from that one always came up that it was easier when you could immune an entire set and then die and then res an entire set to forget that part of the fight for a minute and a half.
Never doing a mechanic. That's
right. Well, that's the whole point. But now you have to always do it every time except the one res. So it's just whatever. It's just that's.
So when you look at healing, like I mentioned, that Elyson changes, we nerf health at the same time as we increase the number of healers that might be required because we increase some damage with the fight, right? Yeah. Those are always the things that we're looking at in terms of yes, we're making this change, but we realize for some people it will make it harder. So how do we potentially change something else?
Islands time.
Okay.
So there are, from the footage we have right now, and it was actually brought up to me that Ian may have already confirmed that you have a whole plethora of islands that are being worked on, like the layouts of them. Yeah. So my question is mostly towards how much of the element is Rogue-Lite-ish, right? So if I were to go queue up for a couple of hours, how many variables am I going to see that I'm not going to see the same island again? I'm
going to ask a question to your question.
Yes.
Define roguelike-ish, because I feel like that's one of those things where like everyone thinks of roguelikes differently, right? Because my definition of my head of roguelike would be different than yours, might be different than his. So
no. So I think that the biggest thing is that the variance is that when I go in and I'm Horde, but the Worgen spawn, will the same layout be present, or they are all like, is the event and the mobs and the goals and the enemy team all variables each time, like different buckets? So there's no this checked off, so I'm fighting the Worgen now. Like you won't know what you're doing until it actually happens.
Yes, so when you go to the table at the docks and you see the maps in front of you, you're going to see what possible islands are available that day, and you're going to be selected the difficulty, not the island.
Oh.
And so you'll say, I want normal, rogue, mythic, PvP. The fiction of you hopping on the ship with your buddies, that captain is going to decide what island you're going to. So you're not going to know exactly which island you're going to land on, nor do you know what side of the island you're going to land on, because that can be different every time. And so the dynamic nature of what's there when you arrive is possibly different every single time.
Okay.
And so think of, even though these are the three on the table, I can go back and do it again and again and
Right.
again. And it could be different every single time.
That's the Rogue-Lite, not like, but Lite.
Right.
What people are wondering about, if they just spam queue them as their play style for the day, is it going to be different every time?
Right.
They'll eventually see patterns, I'm sure, over the iterations of hundreds of these, but that's what we're wondering about, is how variable are they?
Well, and that speaks to sort of each island being different, right?
Right.
The reason why the islands are different is they have different inhabitants and they have different, POIs on them. And so you might see some things that are familiar because, I'm on Verdant Wild and this one has this type of ecology.
Okay.
Whereas I'm on what you're seeing here in the demo, which is Ungol Ruins, which is more that South Pacific feel. So
Sure.
yeah, you might see the same kind of creatures, but the differences are going to be in the time of day, what island you're going to,
Okay.
what's on the table right now.
Who you're fighting against.
Yeah, who you're fighting against. I think
That's what
those
we're wondering,
enemies.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, like we said, we're shooting for 6 islands on release. Those 6 islands should feel very different, right? The environments, the intent there is that the environments feel different. The way you traverse them is going to be different. Right now, we've only seen the Ungol Ruins, which is our jungle tile set, right?
Yeah.
So the jungle tile set will have a completely different ecology than some of our other islands tile sets might have, right? Like if you're going to see Hosen, you get some monkeys that are running around in the jungle. You're not gonna potentially see those on another island. Maybe they're not even an option. They're not even an option on some of the other islands because you wouldn't expect to see Hosen, for instance, in a blizzard on a frosty, snowy space,
So there are,
right?
there are those types of buckets they only pull from in certain situations.
Yeah, exactly.
And-
So
okay.
like with islands, we want them to feel as dynamic as possible. Like there's weather, there's events, there's the different locations that you can land, there's the different ecologies, there's the island itself, there's the enemy team that you're fighting against. Something that I love, that I think is actually super interesting, is the enemy team itself that you're fighting against, right? These advanced NPCs have different behaviors, right? They have different personalities. They themselves have different tactics. And like you said, we don't want it to feel so overwhelming that you're just like, I don't even know what's going on, right? There should be an understanding. There should be a level of mastery where you can at least, like you said, when you see enough, build like a triage of priorities in your head, right? Like, hey, cool, there's a rare elite right there. Rare elites are very valuable. However, this big dynamic event just popped up, and it opens up a elemental portal on the Ungol Ruins, and that elemental portal is far more lucrative than that rare elite. So let's kind of diverge and change our strategy, our tactic, and go this way all of a sudden, right? Another really cool thing, like I love the gameplay that can come up from the advanced NPCs, because maybe there's a group that you've seen before, and you learn, okay, that group's pretty passive, right? That group doesn't want to engage in combat with us. They're going to try to avoid us.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if we engage them, they even retreat, right? They're really good at rooting us and running away. And when you go up against that team, they'll have that same behavior, so you'll know, okay, cool, this is a team where we can divide and conquer, right? We don't need to stay grouped up against this team. We know they're going to avoid us, so let's kind of change up our tactics a bit. Versus a team that you might know is a bit more aggressive, and they might try to engage you more frequently, or they might even seek you out. So you know, okay, cool, against that team, we need to stay grouped up together, right? So there's a ton of elements that make it feel dynamic, but there should also be a tremendous amount of mastery that you can have over the different elements that might appear. Because like we said, Ungol Ruins, okay, cool, I'm on Ungol Ruins. I can only, these are the possible outcomes on this island. There are a lot, and you'll learn as you go. But that's the intent.
And they're not meant to be static forever either. The joy of developing a feature like this is the way this is constructed makes it feel hand-placed, because it has that craft to it. Like it has to make sense where things are, but introducing a new dynamic element to that is actually really easy, and it makes it so that when we look at what is the longevity what can we do to add to these things? Adding new elements that can change up gameplay. Those are things that this system's built for.
Yeah, exactly. We want this to feel handcrafted, right? Like World of Warcraft has that sense of everything is handcrafted. We're putting everything here. It belongs here. It makes sense here. You have an expectation as a player. We always try to fulfill that expectation. We always say fulfill the fantasy. I think another way to put that is fulfilling your expectations when you come here, right? When you walk up the hill and on Uncle Ruins and you see some huts, you have an expectation of what could be in the huts, right? We want that to make sense. So, like Daniel said, we have the ability to say, cool, we're on Uncle Ruins, this is a hut, this is what can spawn here, and if it spawns in the hut, this is what it does, right? Okay. Same thing with like different points of interest on the island. So, cool, we're on a beach now, and there are some vultures, and the vultures can spawn on the beach, but only when there's carrion to eat on the beach, right? There's a dead corpse and some food that can spawn around the carrion as well, and you can use the food to heal yourself. So that's, it's really, really, really cool feature. I'm so excited for the feature. Like, there's so much potential there, especially when you start to think about the possibilities with like the PvP islands, right? Like, okay, cool. These teams these advanced AI are really awesome, but what happens when an actual player is on the other side of this island against me? What are the emergent gameplay? What is the tactics and strategy that will evolve out of that?
Well, they actually can't think on their own. Like, if you develop a strategy and you're like, we're winning, like we figured out how to beat this, they can react and they can be like, hey, advanced NPC team, we came here to do this, but that's not working. Let's change it up and let's try something different. So they actually have the smarts to be able to see what's going on around them and not only know what they're doing, but know what the other team's doing. Kind of in the same way that you do. Like, you're looking at the mini map, you're saying, okay, they're going that way, but they must be going after that big source, so let's go get this. They can make those kind of decisions, and that makes it challenging in a way.
Yes.
So this is a utility toolkit balancing question.
Oh boy.
So you put the 5% magic damage taken debuff on demon hunters and the 5% physical damage taken debuff on monks. How do you feel that that's going to... Is the game being balanced around having a monk and a demon hunter in like a 20-man mythic raid? Is that something we'll have to always try to min-max? Are you balancing it? Because that's a lot of damage.
Right.
So...
5%. It's a lot.
It's a lot over the course of your whole raid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for Mythic, you're expecting everyone to bring all the buffs, bring all the debuffs kind of a deal. But outside of that, are you not going to feel gimped or...
Right, so that's one of those things where we look at that as like a package of things that specific classes and specific specs potentially can bring, right? We don't think of that as like, well, you're going to have this, and this, and this, right? Like, when we talk about these things, funny enough, we used to even have like the buff UI of, do you have them all? It was like a checklist. That's not really how we're thinking about it. We're thinking about it from the perspective of, okay, cool, Demon Hunter, this is what you bring to the raid, right? You're going to be able to do this much damage, you're going to bring this much utility, you're going to do these things, and then we can kind of balance those things out as a full package versus, okay, there's a specific thing right here that you do. It really speaks to the discussion of, cool, we don't have a Demon Hunter in the raid right now, and we have a couple people who are applying to be in the group. What are cool things that we think we could use in an encounter that we don't currently have in our group, right? Maybe we look for those things and seek those out. So that's more or less how we think about that in terms of like, razor's edge tuning. Like we said, if it were like a Mythic raid and you have won by and you win, good for you. If you've lost and you've lost by like 2%, it's like, well, if we had a Demon Hunter, we win. Can we find a Demon Hunter? Right? I don't think it's a requirement. It's just cool. We were 2% away. I'm pretty sure if you've wiped at 2% before, you're pretty close to winning, right? You're gonna win very shortly. Okay. So it's just one of those like, cool, you're almost there. If we execute a little better, we'll make it. We could also potentially bring a Demon Hunter. That would be a beneficial thing to bring to the group right now.
Yeah, that's just bringing back the Powered Fortitude, Intellect, and those kind of kits again. They were removed because there were a problem with balancing between the different raid sizes. But you're bringing them back again 2 expansions later, so that's why the scuttlebutt is just a lot of why.
You like that word?
Yeah.
Scuttlebutt.
Well, because it's Twitter, it's Twitch chat, it's YouTube comments, it's all of that.
It's the cacophony of things.
Exactly. So it's all of that together that I just sponge up, that I'm realizing that, okay, there's a big back and forth on oh, I love the fact that Power of Fortune's back, even though its benefit is But then, like, Intellect is obviously a tangible power gain.
Yeah.
So it's Mystic.
Fortitude's pretty tangible. 10% health.
10% health?
Significant.
Well, we'll have to see the numbers at 120 yet. We're not 120s on
That's
that.
fair.
We don't know the scaling yet.
You're not wrong. But
So,
I mean, that's one of those things you should, like, what you just said, I think, is awesome. Like, you should feel excited. Like, oh, heck yeah, I have Intellect. I
Again,
love
you want
Intellect.
that
It's
again.
such an iconic thing. It's such
Right.
it's such a thing that you can just say, like, hey, I bring in. Like, pick me, I bring in.
Right.
It's cool. Not only am I awesome, but I bring in. But we, there's been a lot of conversation, like you said, across the spectrum of, where we were at the beginning of the game and then where we moved to with the buff UI of you need to. It felt very much.
the
like
9 of 9 back
it
in the
felt
day.
very much like a checkbox,
Yeah.
right? That was kind of going too far in the other direction. And with big changes like this, we always look at oftentimes what the intent of those changes are and how the goals that we're trying to achieve and things like that. So speaking of it to the broader picture of what do I bring, what can I feel good about? Is there something that Daniel has that I wish I had? Man, I wish I had. It's awesome, right? Like it speaks to
Just casting kings, not a paladin.
yeah, exactly.
How about these next couple just have like really simple answers? I think so.
Okay.
I mean, Morgan likes to talk. It's okay. I appreciate it. No, you're good. All to Daniel. No, I'm just kidding. So Ian in the recent dev interview brought up the personal loot change. Now is that across the entire game, or will guild groups still have master loot or other options for loot, or are you trying to push that across the entire game's balancing point for how loot is received and dealt with?
So, to speak a little bit to that, we made a lot of changes to personal loot at the beginning of Legion, right?
Yep.
Legion, we had personal loot, and we added the ability to trade items back and forth between different people, right? When I get a new item and it's not an upgrade for me, I can trade it to you, right?
Yep.
I feel like that was a really big improvement to personal loot. Speaking to some of the problems that we ran into, and I feel like we have either solved or are working to solve that will make a change like personal loot being more of a broad system across the entire game, including raids potentially, even in guild groups, is things like, hey, at the beginning of Legion, if you were Fire Mage and there was an item that you got that was an upgrade, right? It was a higher eye level.
Right.
Even if it was like 15 eye levels or 20 eye levels in some cases, it might not have been an upgrade because it didn't have crit.
Right.
And that was an issue primarily that came from caused by crit being such a valuable stat for you that it like even overshadowed intellect, or it significantly overshadowed intellect, right? We still are looking at problems like that to try to solve those issues where, cool.
That makes my brain go to
powerful.
reforging.
Right.
But
we want to try to make solve those problems where they can come up, right? Another instance that we've talked a lot about, we hear a lot about potential issues that might come up from making it personally widespread is things like trinkets, right? Where you have, your draft of soul, or your draft, right? Which is
Convergence of Fate.
Convergence is another one, but draft was one of those trinkets where, it was insanely powerful on warriors, and a big part of that, was the warrior class abilities were impacting your trinkets. Even though trinkets are an item, I wouldn't expect my class abilities to affect my trinkets. So for Battle for Azeroth, we're talking about potentially making changes to how those interactions work, because in the case like draft, right? A draft, you might have gotten that draft on one spec and been like, oh, this is really not good for me, but it's an upgrade, so I can't trade it because it's a higher eye level, but it's not that great for me because I don't have those interactions like that warrior might have. And then the warrior's sitting over here like, it's 30 eye levels lower, but I don't care, I need it, right? Like finding solutions to problems like that, I think are going to be really beneficial, and things like that do a lot of potentially cause a lot of friction and bring up problems with personal loot, that we're trying to find those problems where they exist and resolve those, and I think we've hit most of them. So I don't know if
It's
that
not something we
helps
can
your question.
see. Well, right. I think the biggest point is that it obviously is something that looks like you're trying to stem the tide of split raids and gear funneling and the Mythic raid scene.
That's not like that is
it's
a
a soft
side
answer.
effect.
Sure,
right? That's
sure,
not the primary intent, though, right? Like
Okay.
that's not the primary reason for that change by any means. That's a nice like, oh cool. Also, that's an effect that we'll see that might happen there. And like you said, you were mentioning Ian's Q&A, like set bonuses are no longer going to be in Battle for Azeroth. You're gonna have this Azerite armor now. That'll be really be good. Those will be, handcrafted items. Those items, when you see that breastplate, it will always be that breastplate, right? It's not going to be, there is no like randomization of which traits you might see on it, so you won't run into problems with things like that. So that's where our head is right now. Like you said, though, this is another example, like you mentioned, with the global cooldown change, where we have opportunities with Battle for Azeroth of, cool, we have this big, wide, game-reaching system. Are we happy with this? Are we not happy with this? Do we want to make changes to it? So when we're speaking to things like that, it's more of a, cool, this is an opportunity to try to make new changes, see how it's received, see if there are problems that we didn't think about. A lot of this is, we're still in alpha, right? Yeah.
We're only for like a little while longer than beta than 4 months.
Sure, but we're still in alpha. We'll soon be going to beta. We still have time to kind of, have discussions, get feedback, and make changes based on that feedback. But I think when we talk to these big, wide, sweeping changes, it's important to speak to the intent. So,
just to clarify then, so guilds will not be able to turn off personal loot. It's just personal loot will be across the board.
I believe it's on beta right now, or I'm sorry, it's on alpha already, right? I think the change.
Well, we can't do raid testing, so
raid testing soon.
Yeah, raid testing will be soon, but you could, I think, test it in like an old raid.
But it's still personal.
I think that's the case.
It's just personal loot across the board, regardless.
Okay. So the one thing that I've seen in a lot of the testing so far that I've done, and the transmog stuff is evolving right now, but like our Holy Paladins back to Sword and Board, have they transmogged Silver Hand? Our Feral Druids only going to want daggers to turn on their cat forms, but they can also loot other weapons. So where's the weapon choice coming in now? Or are you able to just, if you're spec, you can just transmog over whatever you're wearing?
Right.
But the transmog restrictions are that you can't, daggers and fist weapons can't work to different attack animations. So they don't work, they don't pair, they don't toggle down. So people are wondering, like, am I just stuck? Because Windwalker Monks again, fist weapons are all they use in Legion, but they can use swords.
You got your artifact fist weapons or staffs.
Right. But the thing too is like the Shadow Priests could use a staff, or they have to use an offhand and
to get the transmog.
Right, to get Naifu back. So is that the biggest one about that is though? Do you have to use? Because if those weapons aren't available in like a raid tier, you just can't use what you
can't have the look that you want.
Right. For 2 years to work towards. So
don't hate me. I actually don't know the answer to that. That's not something that I have been super involved in. It sounds like there's been a lot of feedback, and I think I've heard there
I was also looking at Daniel because he might have been talking to
Do you know?
Do you know?
About this?
No.
Oh, see?
but I'm thinking because I play for a druid, I'm like, how is that going to work?
Yeah, because you can use a staff or other one-handers, but all your cat forms are tied to daggers.
Yeah.
So you have to only do daggers, but if upgrades come along, you just can't be the Sparkle Kitty anymore.
I know, that would be sad, huh?
Right.
I feel like, I think that feedback has been heard loud and clear on our end. I don't know if there is a planned solution that we can announce or talk about.
There's only like 7 or 8 specs in the game that have a weird wiggle room with that, right? It's like I'm Enhancement Shaman. Like I can still use all one-handers and put Doomhammer on whatever.
Yeah, it's no big deal.
But like Holy Paladins use 2-handers all of Legion, but they're not in Alpha right now.
Yeah,
This is why Alpha and Beta are so valuable. Right?
Sure.
It's like this is where we get that opportunity to go play it ourselves, get the feedback from others, and get these kind of questions.
Yeah, the transmog system that was patched in like a build ago was broken. Like you could be
I heard about that.
You could be in a Holy DK and you can use 2 Doomhammers right now.
I think I've seen that.
Tell me you got screenshots.
I mean, I have live stream footage of it. Yeah, like people showing me their weirdest combinations.
Thank you.
Yeah, using the Brewmaster staff on a tank.
Right.
Like that kind of stuff. Yeah, because they're not being specifically spec or class locked yet. Anyway, they're just like slapped in there just for starting.
Something like that, I think. When you see Doomhammer, you have an expectation that this is a shaman.
Right.
I don't think we're looking to break that expectation.
I think that's what people are scared about. Like, am I going to be a Fury Warrior wielding Ashbringer?
Right.
I don't think it's going to happen.
I have no idea, but
it sounds. I mean, it would look cool, but I don't know about that. All right, that's time.
Thank you,
Daniel.
Cheers.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Morgan.
you.
Thanks, buddy. Good to see you as always. I'm sure we'll meet again.